Hey, good morning. Good to see everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Just before we jump in, I just want to just two quick announcements. I put this in the email, but one is I forgot to remind everybody about tuition. So if you're on the membership, the class membership plan, then that's great. And if you're not, just a reminder when you have a chance to take care of the tuition for the semester. It's $250 for a semester. And I sent a link in the email. If anybody needs the link, they could just send me an email or send me a message and I'll send you the link. That's one. And two is that I want to remind everybody, if you are planning on joining us for high holidays this year, for some of the high holidays or all the high holidays, you should sign up as soon as possible. Put a link there also in the email, and if you need the link, I can send it to you. It's just you can also go to l'chaimcenter.org. It's right on the front page. Sign up for the high holidays. It's going to be a great program this year, and Rosh Hashanah is going to be at the center, and Yom Kippur is going to be at the Renaissance Hotel in Northbrook. Everyone can have an opportunity to stay in the hotel if you want and experience the whole Yom Tov that way. And we have Lori Palatnik and her husband coming, so it's going to be amazing. Rabbi Gadi and Eve are going to be leading. Rabbi Jeremy is going to be there assisting as well. So yeah, you don't want to miss. You really don't want to miss. Okay. Now, that being said, let us continue chapter 5. Actually, the goal for today is to finish, not only to finish chapter 5, but to finish Zehirus, vigilance. We're going to finish vigilance and maybe even make a start on the new Midah. So what we were talking about last week is that there are three things that can get in the way of our growth in this particular area of vigilance. Again, this just to review quickly. Vigilance means that we're living an examined life. We're not just going through the motions. We're not just plowing forward and going about our routine in an unexamined way, but rather we're thinking about our lives. We're being very intentional about what our goal is, about what our purpose is, and we're constantly analyzing our choices and our actions to make sure that they're consistent with those goals and that they're moving us in the right direction. And we said there are three things that can get in the way of that. One of them is an over exaggerated focus on worldly matters. I'm too tuned in. I'm too occupied and preoccupied with making a living and everything that goes into my day-to-day life and maintaining and supporting my family and everything that's very important, but that takes over and that becomes the main focus and the main interest in my life. And if that happens, it's very hard to really set aside the necessary time and mental energy and put it towards the exercises needed for vigilance. Just want to share with you a personal story today. Elul, right? We're getting close to Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And I gave this whole talk on Shabbos about how, there's still half of Elul left and we shouldn't feel like, oh, I've already wasted half of it. I might as well just squander the second half. And then I said to myself, I better take those words to heart myself. So I decided to spend a little time today doing some hitbodedut, some personal prayer and some private, personal meditation and prayer with Hashem. And I took an hour and a half and I went into the forest behind my house and I walked and I spoke to Hashem. It was amazing. It was amazing. Such clarity, such sweetness, such closeness that I felt to Hashem at that moment. Just plugged in, just felt like, Hashem was listening to me and I was able to open up my heart and just share my personal feelings and my personal emotions and express my gratitude towards Hashem and share with him the areas that I'm struggling and ask for help in certain areas. And it was just such a Zehirus moment. it was a moment of real Zahirus where for an hour and a half, I was really focused on, you know, how do I want to grow and how do I want to use this time and how do I want to move forward and how do I want to help people and what are the, all the things that were so important. So I just want to encourage everybody, take a little time, even if, if you're not in the habit of doing that, it doesn't matter. Just find a little time, find an hour somewhere and go to a very private place. If it's outside and it's beautiful, even better because you feel Hashem's closeness, But even if it's not, it doesn't matter. Just go anywhere. Hang on one second. Sorry. Where was I? Anyway, yeah. So I think that it's a wonderful way to spend an hour. I hope to do it again. Even again this week and a couple of times next week. And that really kind of puts you in the right mindset for Rosh Hashanah. So that's Zahirus. That's what Zahirus is all about. That's one. Two is not hanging around with or not getting involved in mockery, scoffing, and that sort of behavior, because that undermines any opportunity for growth and being serious and taking life seriously. That was the second detractor. And the third detractor, the one that we're focusing on, and we're going to finish now, the third detractor is the company that we hang out with. Choosing the right company, avoiding bad company, avoiding with the type of people that are gonna bring us down, that are going to that are going to affect our spiritual focus and bring us into a negative mindset. And that's where we are now. And that is something that is really, really important. And that is, we spoke a lot about it last week, how to choose the people that you want to spend time with. And even when you can't choose the people that you want to spend time with, because we can't always choose who we want to spend time with, how to use the time that we're spending with people that have a tendency to pull us away from our focus in life, how to utilize that time and be prepared for those situations, not to walk into them cold, but to walk in prepared. So along those lines, he continues on page 109, and he's going to bring a few scriptural proofs, from both from the Tanakh and also from the Talmud to back this up. So first he quotes King Solomon. Shlomo HaMelech warned further, go far away from a man who is a fool. Okay? Don't hang around with fools. Don't hang around with fools. It's not going to get you anywhere. Okay, there are people in our family that we would say are foolish and we have no choice and you got to spend time with them. And do spend time with them because you're family. But, but be prepared. And David HaMelech said too, this is in Tehillim, Ashrei Ish Asher Lo Halach Ba'atas Rishayim. Praiseworthy is a man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, and stood not in the path of the sinful, and sat not in the sessions of the scoffers. And thus did the sages of blessed memory explain the lesson from this verse, which first mentions walking, then standing, then sitting. You look at that verse, it says, don't walk in the ways, don't sit in the path, don't stand in the path, don't sit in their sessions, that it's a gradual process. It's an insidious type of decline that we don't even realize is happening. Im halach sofa lamod. If we walk along a sinful path, eventually we're going to stand and linger there. And once he stands and lingers, he will eventually sit and associate with scoffers, which in turn will lead him to become a scoffer like them. Okay. So what does he say? He says, and David states further, I have not sat with dishonest people, and I do not associate with hypocrites. I hate the gathering of evildoers, and with the wicked ones I will not sit. This is how David protected himself against negative influences. Okay, so yeah, it's a tough one. It's a balance, because there are people in our lives that we can't disassociate with, nor should we disassociate with. There are people who we love very much. There are people who are close family members. There are people that are close, longtime childhood friends. We don't want to break off relationships with them, and we shouldn't break off relationships with them, but we should be aware. We should know, we should be mindful. We should have zahirus, we should be vigilant and know that there are certain people that when we spend time with them, they have a tendency to bring us away from our truest self, away from our authentic expression of who we want to be. And when we know we're going into those situations, just be ready for it. That's all. Don't put yourself in a bubble and only hang out with like-minded people, but just be ready and be prepared when you are going to be spending time with people that don't share your perspective on life, and be ready to how to make the most out of those situations. Okay, so now we continue on the bottom. A person has only to become purified and to cleanse himself of improper influences and to hold back his feet from following the ways of the multitudes who are mired in the follies of the times. I feel like we could talk about this for the rest of this hour. Okay, I just want to highlight this sentence. We have to basically hold back our feet from following the ways of the multitude who are mired in the follies of the times. I want to take a stab at that sentence before I go on my rant.
Say it again.
We are encouraged to hold back our feet from following the ways of the multitudes who are mired in the follies of the times.
I mean, don't get swept up with everything that's going around you, what society may be doing, what a group of people you're hanging out with may be doing, what the common, what the sometimes you have to not take the path of least resistance, take the path of resistance, go with your beliefs and not with the crowd and society necessarily, or you can, so.
Yeah, excellent. You don't want to add anything to that. I think I was thinking along the same lines. First of all, I like this expression, Noah Raglav, hold back my feet from following in the ways. What does that mean? What does that imply?
That your feet would operate unconsciously unless you interpose your will.
Well said.
Sure, somebody says we should walk in the ways, Mike, I think, we should walk in the ways of God. So this is the opposite, hold back our feet from following the ways.
Excellent.
It's like I view it like a current, you're in a current that's maybe could be pulling you in the wrong direction. You have to hold back.
Right. If I have to hold back my feet, that means that my feet are wanting to go in a certain direction, and I have to apply force to prevent them from moving in that direction. So what is the direction that my feet are naturally running towards? What is that direction? What's the default position where my feet, like if you're driving in a car, you don't have, when you put the car in neutral, you're still moving forward, right? There's a tendency for us to move in a direction unless we consciously actively activate the brakes. So I think the human tendency, the Rambam talks about this a lot, Maimonides, is that the human tendency is that we go in the direction of the people around us. Like Mike was saying before, what people are doing around us is the default position that we will naturally move toward. And
excuse me. I've always called it the lemming theory. When there's a long line, people get at the back of the line because there's a long line and everybody's walking in the same direction. They don't ask themselves why, but if everybody's doing it, I should be doing it too. And that's just the Yetzer Hara telling you that this is the direction that I'm trying to suck everybody to go. And the challenge that we have is to every time we see that long line or the crowd going in a direction, usually it's the wrong way. They're taking you down.
That's why you always take the back roads, right, Larry?
That's why I always take the back roads. I never follow the guy in front of me. It doesn't work.
It never works. Julie, what were you going to say?
I think also it has to do with your habits. You know, a lot of what we do is very habitual. So instead of just being on autopilot and doing what you would normally do, just stop and think about it and make sure that that's the right direction.
Yes. So those are two different things and important things. One is the flow of what other people around us are doing. And we have a natural tendency to walk in that direction. That's our default. That's our robotic sort of programming. And Julie's adding, not only do we have the tendency to walk in the direction of other people, but we have the tendency to walk in the direction that we've been walking until now. There's an inertia. There's a sort of a habituated tendency to just do what we've been doing now because that's what I was doing yesterday and that's what I did the day before. That's called, just forming habits, and our habits will lead us into directions which sometimes are good, sometimes are bad. I think it's very important we form habits very early on. As parents, we try to help our children to form good habits early on, because a lot of times in life, the habits that we form early on are the directions that our legs walk in for the rest of our lives. It doesn't have to be that way. We can and do and have the ability to consciously uproot our legs from going in that direction, but it takes hard work and focused effort, right? So, but that's what it's talking about over here. Holding back our feet. Holding back our feet means consciously, in a focused way, put in the effort, not to just do what everybody else around me is doing, but to think about it, to contemplate it, to ask the basic questions. Is this going to lead me closer to Hashem? Or is this going to lead me further away from Hashem? Is this going to lead me closer to my purpose in life? Or is it going to pull me away? And think about it, analyze it. And if it's the right thing to do, then go in that direction. There's nothing inherently or necessarily wrong about going the way other people are going. But think about it first and analyze it first, and don't just go in that direction because that's the direction that everybody else is going. And we live, I hate to say this, and I don't want to make a whole social commentary about this, but we live in a period of time where it's so hard not to just take in and accept and buy in hook, line, and sinker with everything that we're being told because we create these little echo chambers that we exist in. And all of the social media algorithms are built in such a way where they're just shooting us the information that we want to hear. And then we create this, this sort of bubble of looking at the world in a certain way. And then we go with it, and we also have this unbelievable groupthink tendency. Human beings have that in general. And now with the way the world works and the way information is communicated, we're even more at risk of falling into that mentality of thinking and doing what everybody else around me is doing. And the Ramchal is telling us we have to avoid that. We have to consciously, in a deliberate way.
Rabbi, I just have a thought. I mean, the general tendency, I think, for most of us is that we're pulled in the direction of comfort. And society also is built on, not to get into too much, political, but pulling us in a direction or pushing us in the direction that it's better to be comfortable than not. And that's in many ways it goes against what, the Torah talks about. It's not the best thing for it.
I had a great experience this morning. I was taking Yosef to school, and there's a kid on our street, on the neighborhood in the street, who goes to I know the kid, and he goes to school near Yosef. So I offered him a ride, and he's a senior in high school. And we were driving to school, and I asked him how his summer was. I hadn't seen him, and he said he spent 2 months in America over the summer. And he was a camp counselor, and he was in America for 2 months. And he said His parents were worried about sending him to America for 2 months because they were worried that he would like it so much that he wouldn't want to come back. That's what he said. He said, my parents almost canceled my trip at the last minute. So I said, okay, and, how did you feel? Well, did that happen? He said, not at all. He said, in America, everything is incredibly comfortable. Everything is very easy and everything is very convenient. He said, but I wouldn't trade my life here for any of that. And I was so happy that he said that because Yosef was in the car, and all Yosef ever thinks about is, he misses America because he wants to, there's certain ingredients that he can't get here, and there's certain, he wants to cook and he doesn't have the right utensils here, and his kitchen's not big enough here. All the, and the comforts and the conveniences of life are very, very alluring and tempting, and they will oftentimes encourage us, or they will lead us to a place where we sacrifice on what's really important to us, what really matters, meaning and value, and we have to be so careful not to let comfort and convenience influence our thinking in such a way where we choose those niceties or those luxuries over what really matters in life, what really matters, what gives us purpose and meaning. So I think that's absolutely true. So what are we supposed to do? Instead, says the Ramchal on page 110, or at the top, he must direct his feet to the courtyards of Hashem and his dwelling places. I mean, the image is so magnificent over here. You can literally picture this guy, like he's walking in a certain direction and he grabs his legs and he turns them around and he focuses and he points them towards the base medrash, towards the study hall, towards the place where Torah is being learned and wisdom is being discussed and prayer and communication with Hashem is being engaged in a meaningful way. That's what the Ramchal is saying. He said, you choose where your legs are going to walk. Don't let your legs just walk wherever they're going to go, because guess what? If you just let your legs walk without choosing which direction you want to point them to, they will walk right to the bar, or to the couch to watch the football game, or to anywhere that's easy and comfortable and not challenging, and where people are like-minded people are going to be. If you want to grow, if you want to delve into wisdom, if you want to understand life in a deeper way, if you want to connect in a deeper way, you have to take those legs and twist them and direct them toward the dwelling places of Hashem, the courtyards of Hashem and his dwelling places, meaning the base medrash, the study hall. And that is it's an incredible point that he makes over here. I love that image. Just you taking control of the direction that your legs are going.
David, another visual image that that I like so much is the quote from Viktor Frankl that between the stimulus and the response is the pause. And I use that because I think that's where our choice is. In that moment, what happens and what you do, you have free choice and you can turn those legs like you just, described.
Right. You don't have to follow the stimulus. Doesn't have to automatically direct you. It can and it will, unless you do that pause and think and choose. But that's the essence of what it means to be a human being. That's what it means to be created in the image of God, that we do have, animals don't have that ability. They get the impulse, and the impulse creates the direction that the animal goes, and that's it. There's no pause in between. There's no moment of reflection or choice in between. They're wired, they're pre-programmed in a certain way. This impulse will always generate this response 100% of the time. But we're not like that. We're not. We have the ability to pause in between the impulse and the action and to choose. Okay. Fine. How to respond to the influence of bad friends. Okay. Now, if it occurs that one finds himself in the company of someone who taunts him, for his fulfillment of mitzvahs. Okay, this is a little bit of an extreme case. I don't know if it's ever happened to anybody here. I don't recall ever being in a situation where someone's directly taunting me or making fun of me for my religious observance or choices, but maybe I'm just not thinking of it, and maybe some of you have had that experience. But what are we supposed to do? But now the Ramchal takes a pretty aggressive approach to people who are trying to mock you and make fun of you and bring you down in your religious observance. So he says you shouldn't pay any attention to that derision. On the contrary, you should taunt those who taunt him and shame them. Right? Wow. Now we're not talking about people who, don't get what you're doing and are just not where you're at, and they're not they might be informed, but we're talking about people who are taunting you, actively, knowingly, consciously trying to bring you down and make fun of you and take the wind out of your sail and your religious, fervor. So he says, no, that's not okay. You got to blast them. You got to literally just boom, oh yeah, and just let them have it, which is unusual. We rarely do that in Judaism, but this is a case where you're supposed to just go directly at them and taunt them. And he should consider the thought, listen to this analogy, this parable, that if he ever had the opportunity to earn a large sum of money, would he neglect doing what was necessary to attain it because of his friends so that they should not taunt him for it? Right? Let's say a person has an opportunity, that is a big moment that he could, make a ton of money, but in order to do it, he has to, I don't know, whatever, come up with something, really that's embarrassing or belittling or whatever. You're not going to do it for $1 million. Of course you're going to do it. Okay, so they make fun of me. Who cares? In a few minutes, I'll have $1 million, and then we'll see who's laughing. So if it were about money, if it were about acquisition of resources, I wouldn't not do it just because people are going to make fun of me. So how much more so then should he not be willing to destroy his soul by neglecting the mitzvos because of the taunting friends? In this vein, the sages of blessed memory exhorted, be it bold as a leopard to do the will of your Father in heaven. Now, I wanted to see it. Can anyone share an experience? Has there ever been a time where someone was just going at you, like making fun of you, or just really sort of, letting you, trying to make you feel stupid for your religious observance or for your, choices to act in a specific way vis-a-vis halacha or observance, and how you responded?
Hi, it's Doris.
Hi, Doris.
Hi. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're referring to, but something happened in my home last week, and it made me think a little bit about what Susie shared last week, how, we have friends for over 40 years. We can't distance ourselves from everyone, even though we have been changing and growing. So I had guests for dinner, and someone said to me, so how's your friend doing? And I said, she's doing great. Her daughter just got engaged. And my friend said, oh, really? At that age? So what? She's going to have 6 kids by the time she's 30? You probably love that. And I did not know where to go with that. And you're talking now about shaming when you're being taunted. But what would you do with dinner guests at your table who you've been friends with for over 40 years?
Tell them that you hope they enjoy the meal, because it's the last time they're going to be eating at your house for. You can't do that. You can't do that. But
Rabbi,
those situations, yeah, Howard.
isn't silence a very powerful tool
Oh,
at that?
wow.
Um,
Wow. How would that play out, Doris? What if you just sort of just sat there literally in silence and did not respond at all? like you said, nothing, like it purposely created an awkward silence, you know, in response to that comment. How do you think?
I was silent because I was so taken aback. I didn't know what to do. So I was kind of silent. And then I tried to segue into another topic, but I was very hurt and angry and would like to be better prepared for the next time, because there's always a
Could you
next
say,
time.
could you say something like, well, are you jealous that she's having such a meaningful life and is going to add so much value and bring, you know, hopefully other souls into the world, and that's a wonderful thing, you know, that sort of taunt her back with the beauty of the situation that she's mocking.
Mhm.
How about a sarcastic application of what you just said, Doctor? What if you said 12 would be better?
Better, I agree, that's better.
I like that.
Wouldn't it also be appropriate to say, aren't they blessed? And leave it at that?
I like that, Howard. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
That's
I think
that's good.
That's appropriate and diplomatic. And even though the Ramchal over here is talking about taunting, I don't think we really have the tools to apply that. I'm not advocating that technique, because I don't think we really know what it means and how to use it and when to use it. But I think a very subtle positive like that, a positive, subtle statement that says, just makes the point that you don't buy into that way of thinking, and that you see it as something beautiful, is enough. I think that's probably the best approach personally. But yeah,
Thank you.
Rabbi?
Thank you. Wait, Julie, one second. Julie's going to say something. And then
Oh, yes. I just think it's so uncanny that you're asking this question, because I did have that experience this week with somebody, and the way I handled it was, yeah, I did get defensive back initially, and it didn't go very well. And then I talked it over with a friend, and then I went back to the person and I said, you know, this is something that gives me strength. And this is why, you know, I'm doing this prayer, because it gives me a lot of strength and it's helping me improve my life and deal with some issues in my life. And then, you know, and I also tried to get inside the other person's head to understand where it was coming from. And, you know, there was some psychoanalysis, armchair analysis going on there. And then it just helped me, after talking it over with the person, we both understood each other better. So in the moment, I was very defensive and like, how can this be a bad thing if I'm doing something religious? But I took a step back and I realized where it was coming from and why it helped me understand more why I was doing it and articulate better why I was doing it. And it,
I think that's
you know,
great.
it's just interesting to me that you would ask that question when I just dealt
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, no, that's it does come up. It does come up, you know, and I think that that it's good to discuss it, because it's good to, I don't think, you know, saying nothing is appropriate, because I think it's important to stand up for yourself. I think the message should be delivered that that, you know, in general, when somebody's excited about something and doing something positive in their life, whether it's religion or it's, you know, athletics or eating well or whatever, it's not the right thing to do to try to, you know, make a comment to undermine their you know, excitement about growing in any sort of way, you know. And I think it's important to call that out, you know. But I think it's good to do it in a way that's not, you know, passive aggressive, or, you know, just say it straight. Look, hey, that was hurtful, because, you know, to me this is a very important part of my life right now, and I'm getting so much from it, and, you know, leave it at that, something like that. Yeah, there.
I had, just to echo what has been said, I had the very similar experience where there was some very detrimental things said about following the path of Hashem. And I definitely took the Ramchal's approach, which is I went insane. And I do recommend anybody doing that.
I remember you told me that story. That didn't work out too well, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily end the right way. So taking a deep breath before you get to the point is probably a good lesson
Yeah,
learned.
because like, I said this the other day. I said I was talking on Shabbos. I was with a friend over for Shabbos, and I was saying something to him, and he said, this is how you should. It says in halacha that this is how you're supposed to deal with this situation. And I said to him, yeah, but that was talking about a time when people were people. And he said,
Oh, that's awesome.
right, you're right. And I don't know if those words just came out of my mouth, but when I said it, I was like, I think what the Ramchal is talking about is a time when people were people, and and then that would have elicited the correct response, and it would have solved the problem. But people today are not quite healthy enough to be able to respond positively to a frontal attack. And I think that our collective approach over here is going to be much better. Yes, Michael.
Oh, I just, instead of like taunt and shame, I think like we're saying, I think if you present a positive, how important and how meaningful it is, they then feel the self. You don't have to shame them; they'll feel the shame, and you're not taunting. You're kind of showcasing what you feel, and in that way. And I think it's important, probably, to speak up in a positive way, because you're also telling yourself, this is a good thing. You're supporting yourself. If you don't do anything, there's it's sort of like it could create a crack of doubt, So I think it is important to make a positive statement about why you're doing it.
I just want to say that last point that you just made, I actually saw it somewhere down here in the notes. Something very similar. I'm trying to find where it was. I don't see it right now. But it's such a good and important additional point, which is that in certain situations, if you don't stand up and say something or make a comment in some way, not only is it not going to register with the person that you're speaking to, that and maybe possibly influence their behavior, it's going to affect you, right? You have to sort of discredit that statement, strike it from the record effectively and efficiently, or else it will seep in and it will create, like you said, a crack in your own belief system. Maybe he's right. Maybe it is silly what I'm doing. Maybe I don't need to be, but if you say something, even if it's just, Howard's on it, I actually feel like it's a wonderful blessing. Something like that. You made a statement that will psychologically prevent that other person's statement from seeping into your own perspective and weakening your clarity, which is not less important at all. Yes.
David?
Yeah, Pops.
I think I'll speak for myself, but I think early in our journey, if someone would make a comment like that, we were I was kind of embarrassed. I felt like, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm going off the deep end a little bit. But as time went on, and you really believe in what you're doing, it's easier to have a discussion like that.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
And,
there's still
some time. And the
more
other thing
confidence
is,
you gain in your own values and your own behavior, the more comfortable you are standing up for it.
the other thing is, as you know better than anybody, I have the well-earned reputation of being a negative thinker. And so what you're asking to do is to, turn your feet around. But if my feet are turned around, not necessarily thinking about wanting to go to where Hashem is, I can't give myself credit for that. But if you're a negative thinker and you have that reputation and you're going against the stream, it's a very difficult position to be in because people want you to agree with them. So, I feel that a lot. It's just it's hard to go against the grain of everybody else.
Yeah. No, it really is. It's a very, very hard thing to do. We're not, you know, we're not built that way. It requires a lot of strength. And that's why he says over here in Pirkei Avot, be bold as a leopard to do the will of your Father in heaven. You have to be bold like a leopard. There are going to be times when you're going to have to find that strength and that courage to do what you're committed to doing, even when it looks strange and it sounds strange and people are going to be making fun of you, and that's okay.
I'm as bold as a squirrel right now, so I'm working on it.
Well,
Those are pretty bold.
it's a basic human nature. We're built, I read books on evolution and why we have an advantage as humans. One of the reasons is we're social and we can follow in groups and cooperate in groups. So there's that tendency to be cooperative and participate in a group. But the key is really making sure it's the right group. And if it's the wrong group or the wrong interaction, then you have to resist that, not go with the natural tendency to cooperate.
Yeah.
I think people tend to focus on, I wouldn't say extreme, but what's very different from what they do. For example, I get the question a lot if I say, oh, I'm active in a tourist center, it's called the Chaim Center, it's so wonderful. They say, do they have a mechitza? That's like one of the two questions. Or do the women wear sheitos? I mean, it's like they take that, they don't see, those are the things that are so different from their world that they can't understand and they can't accept. And it's very difficult to, I mean, I do say yes, but everyone is accepted and you can come in at whatever level you are and grow and all those things that we know is true about the Chaim Center. But I don't know if it's human tendency to pick the far extremes, quote unquote, so to speak, of that in terms of what's different from their Jewish world, and say, oh, that's their excuse for not being open to seeing further. And no matter what you explain about the beauty of it and the reasons for it, and I don't think it penetrates.
Right. No, it's true. It's really true. I was just going to add one layer to this, which is that, don't think for a second that being religious and hanging out in a religious community creates, exempts you or allows you to avoid these types of scenarios. In other words, I'm not talking about the making fun of the mitzvahs, although you do get some of that, because the general, it's an old joke, but it's sadly true that what a religious fanatic, what's the definition of a religious fanatic? Someone who keeps one more halacha than I keep. And what's the definition of a heretic? Someone who keeps one less halacha than I keep. Somehow I figured it exactly out perfectly. I'm keeping it, and if you keep more, then you're a fanatic, and if you keep less, you're a heretic. And so there is like, this does happen in religious circles as well, believe it or not, maybe in a more subtle way. Also, in the religious world, there is a huge tendency to groupthink, to groupthink. Rabbi says this, and then all of a sudden, there's 2,000 Hasidim following him, to go in that direction and to do exactly what he said. And somehow you have to still be able to think for yourself, even though everyone around you in your whole community, everyone's doing something in a good way, in a positive way, in a religious way. A lot of times it's not necessarily the right way, the right thing. You have to be independent. You have to have independent thinking skills. You have to be able to think for yourself. Yes.
Rabbi, I just had a thought. I want to digress just for a minute about the mechitza that Susie was talking about. I just had a thought. If you were, I have a close friend.
We're not getting rid of it, Alan. We're not getting rid of it.
No, I had a close friend that just lost his wife, and he would be much more comfortable if there was a mixed prayer with women, he would feel much more lost than if he was davening with just men. Or what if you have a couple that's being divorced? There, a woman would be much more comfortable to be in presence of other women than being in a mixed company. So to me, it makes so much more sense in this moment that I never even thought about before.
That's actually a great point. It's a really good point.
So
We can tell people we're doing it. We're doing it for sensitivity reasons. We don't want to make anybody feel bad in any way. What was I going to say? That's the last point. Okay, fine. So let's see how the Ramchal concludes this chapter and how he concludes the Midah of Zehirus. David HaMelech said, we're on top of 111, Tehillim, I will speak of your testimonies before kings, and I will not be ashamed. For although the issues and the discussions of most kings concern matters of splendor and enjoyment, what do kings talk about when they hang out with each other? When you get a few kings, it's good to be the king, and they will talk about their swap stories about why it's good to be the king. But David didn't stoop to that. David didn't get involved in that, even when he was in the presence of other kings. And David, who was also a monarch like them, would seemingly have suffered disgrace if, when he was in their company, he were to speak about matters of ethics and Torah instead of talking about the splendor and pleasures of human beings like them. Nevertheless, David paid no attention to this potential disgrace at all, and his heart was not enticed to participate in these follies, since he had already realized the truth. Rather, he explicitly declares, I will speak of your testimonies before kings, and I will not be ashamed. Meaning he had absolutely no embarrassment or shame whatsoever for going into a state affair with kings and dignitaries and other noble people from other, countries, and being who he was, authentic to who he was, inside like his outside, and his outside like his inside. And he didn't pretend. He didn't put on a show. He didn't, try to hide his religiosity or anything. He didn't, wear a baseball cap and tuck in his tzitzis. It's always a funny thing when you see someone at the baseball game or the Cub game, whatever, he's got a long beard, and payas or whatever, but he puts on ties up his face, puts on a baseball hat and tucks in his tzitzis. Like you can't tell he's a religious Jew. It's like, everybody knows. Who you pretend? What are you hiding? But David didn't do that. He was bold. He's like, this is who I am. I'm different than all you guys. You guys get together and you talk about, why it's good to be the king. Well, that's not what I talk about. I talk about values and Torah and wisdom and Hashem and splendor and all these things. And the prophet Isaiah said similarly, therefore, I made my face as hard as flint and knew that I would not be ashamed. Prophet Isaiah is talking about people who would taunt him and make fun of him for his religiosity. He didn't let it affect him. He didn't let it, bring him down in any way. So this is a really, really important lesson. This is sort of the conclusion of Zehirus, is that if we want to, and we're serious about our growth and our relationship with Hashem, and we understand that our purpose in this world is to come closer to Hashem every day of our lives, then we have to live purposeful lives. We have to live focused and examined lives. We have to live lives that include built-in time for spiritual accounting and analysis and assessment of our choices, thoughts and our words and our actions and our path and our course and our attributes and our qualities, and constantly be checking in and understanding where we are and where we're going. And we have to be careful not to let over occupation with worldly matters derail our commitment to Zehirus, or to let scoffers and cynics undermine the seriousness of our efforts. And ultimately, we have to make sure that the people that we're with, whatever degree possible, are the type of people that inspire us and lift us up and make us feel whole and make us feel inspired and make us feel motivated to be better people. And when we can't be with those types of people, we have to be prepared and be ready to deal with people that are going to attempt to bring us down. And then we have to choose consciously which direction to send our legs in. Because if we don't choose, our legs will choose for us. And we'll go to the easiest, most comfortable path of least resistance. And we have to redirect those legs and send them to Hashem's courtyards, to the places of holiness and wisdom and inspiration. And if we do all this, we'll be able to live lives with zihirus, with vigilance. And that's the first building block in this long journey that the Ramchal is describing that leads us ultimately to spiritual greatness.
Rabbi,
Yes.
could I make a comment on the prior subject we were talking about? If you're with friends, quote unquote, and they make a disparaging remark, I think one of the most powerful things that you can do without anger, assume that they've been swept away without thinking, because that's the way most conversation in relationship to that topic take place. And express yourself positively as a reaction of how you feel, as a means of educating them. We have friends, and that has occurred on a couple of occasions. And the fact is, they have been in the company of people that feel a level of enthusiasm so infrequently for these things that it becomes something that's educational for them. And they are somewhat more sensitive to crossing that line with you in the future.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, you have an opportunity, to. And by the way, we naturally assume that everybody that we're with is gonna, be turned off by our Judaism, but there's definitely going to be a lot of people along the way that are going to be curious about it and be inspired by it and want to know more about it. And you should be ready to share it with them also, not in a, I'm holier than thou type of way, and not in a preachy sort of way, but be willing to share it with them, like what a more observant lifestyle has done for you and your family and your relationships and your, you never know how you're going to.
Not even if you don't go any further than expressing your enthusiasm and your joy for having been involved in that kind of an experience without any apparent effort to correct them. You're just exposing your own enthusiasm.
I think that's definitely true. Okay. Wonderful. I guess we'll stop here. Shabbat Tov, everybody. Have a great week. And look forward to more great learning later in the week. Don't forget, sign up for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur if you're planning to go. It's going to be a really special experience, and I think that everyone will enjoy it. Okay. Talk to you all soon.
Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Be well.